Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that your thoughts are no longer your own. Not because someone took them from you, but because you gave them away. One click, one scroll, one follow at a time. You open your phone, and before your eyes even adjust to the light, you're met with faces, perfect faces, speaking in carefully rehearsed authenticity. They tell you how to think, what to feel, what to want. You call it inspiration, but inspiration has quietly become indoctrination. Somewhere between admiration and envy, something inside you shifted. You began to measure your worth not by who you are, but by how closely you resemble the ones you follow. The modern world calls them influencers, but perhaps that's too innocent a name for what they really are. Because what they influence isn't behavior, it's identity. Every era has its priests, its prophets, its rulers of perception. Machiavelli once wrote that power is held not by those who control armies, but by those who control belief. If he were alive today, he wouldn't need to advise kings, he'd advise creators. Because the battlefield has changed. The new kingdom is digital, and its citizens willingly surrender their will to those who know how to hold a gaze, shape a narrative, and manipulate desire. We say we follow them because we like them, but maybe that's not true. Maybe we follow them because we want to be them. And that desire, subtle, subconscious, addictive, is where the trap begins. You start by borrowing their habits, their language, their dreams. But slowly, you find yourself living inside someone else's idea of a good life. You begin to perform yourself, to post, pose, and speak in ways that earn approval instead of truth. Every like becomes a leash. Every view becomes validation. You don't notice it happening at first. Nobody ever does. Because the most effective form of control isn't force, it's seduction. You're not ordered to obey. You're invited to belong. And belonging in the digital age comes with a price. So the question isn't, what makes influencers powerful? The real question is, why do we keep giving them our power? What makes us so willing to be shaped, molded, and mirrored back to ourselves through strangers who don't even know our names? Perhaps beneath the surface, we're not addicted to them. We're addicted to the version of ourselves they reflect. And that reflection, like a mirror made of smoke, is what keeps us chasing what we'll never truly touch. Because the influence isn't on your screen, it's in your mind. The danger of influence doesn't begin with deception, it begins with emptiness. Carl Jung once said that the greatest danger to the human soul is not sin, but unconsciousness. And that's precisely what the influencer economy feeds on, a population asleep to its own psychological hunger. Because before someone can shape your desires, you must first forget how to shape them yourself. Every human being carries within them a void, a quiet ache to be seen, validated, understood. In a world stripped from silence, that ache grows louder, and the influencer steps in, not as a manipulator, but as a mirror. They reflect back the version of you that you wish existed, confident, loved, whole. It's not charisma they sell, it's coherence. They appear certain in a world addicted to doubt. They appear happy in a generation drowning in comparison. And because certainty is rarer than truth, we trust it, even when it's manufactured. Machiavelli once wrote that people are moved more by appearances than by reality, because everyone sees what you appear to be, but few feel what you are. The influencer lives inside that principle. The camera becomes their throne, the algorithm their army. They understand that perception is the purest form of power, and they wield it not with weapons, but with aesthetics. But the true manipulation lies deeper than filters and sponsorships. It's psychological. It taps into the primal machinery of the human mind: status bias, mimicry, and social proof. You see someone celebrated, and your brain concludes, they must know something I don't. You imitate them to feel safe, to belong, to avoid the ancient fear of being left behind by the tribe. The tragedy is that our modern tribe no longer lives around a campfire. It lives inside a screen. And unlike real tribes, digital ones demand performance, not authenticity. You must constantly prove your worth to remain visible. Visibility has become the new survival. Nietzsche warned that when you stare too long into the abyss stares back. Today, the abyss wears makeup and a motivational quote. You stare, you scroll, you admire, and bit by bit, it begins to remake you in its image. The influencer doesn't force you to follow. You choose to. But that choice, repeated enough times, stops feeling like yours. And perhaps that's the darkest truth of all. The modern self is no longer shaped by reflection, but by projection. You think you're just scrolling. You think you're in control, choosing what to watch, who to follow, what to believe. But control is the first illusion. Because each swipe is a transaction, not of money, but of identity. What begins as curiosity becomes conditioning. The more time you spend observing others, the more your mind rewires itself to mirror them. Your desires, your habits, your sense of self, all quietly shifting toward conformity, disguised as freedom. You tell yourself you're being inspired, but inspiration, when repeated endlessly, becomes indoctrination. The algorithm isn't showing you what you love, it's teaching you what to love. And soon, you can no longer tell the difference between authenticity and imitation. You've become fluent in the language of performance, a language that rewards visibility over virtue, reaction over reflection. The influencer doesn't have to command you to change. All they have to do is keep your attention long enough for your subconscious to do it for them. This is the hidden architecture of influence, not persuasion, but possession. Carl Jung called this phenomenon psychic contagion. It's when ideas, moods, and archetypes spread like invisible viruses between people, altering behavior without consent. Today, this contagion moves faster than thought, accelerated by likes, shares, and the illusion of connection. You start dressing differently, speaking differently, thinking in borrowed tones. Even your silence begins to echo with someone else's thoughts. And yet, no one forces you. That's what makes it so powerful. The most effective prisons are the ones we decorate ourselves. You see it everywhere. People competing not for happiness, but for the perception of it. Friendships that dissolve into comparisons, relationships that become performances, individuals who confuse validation with love, relevance with meaning. Society itself begins to fracture under this pressure. The collective psyche becomes restless, insecure, and addicted to performance. We've built a culture where authenticity feels dangerous, where stillness feels like failure. Machiavelli would have called this the perfect tyranny, one where the subjects believe they are free, yet willingly serve the image of an ideal they will never reach. And so the world scrolls on, hypnotized by its own reflection, seeking connection in a system designed for control. You can feel it, can't you? That quiet exhaustion that comes from pretending to be visible. That emptiness that follows the dopamine of attention. This is the unseen cost of influence, the erosion of self beneath the performance of self. You wanted to be seen. Now you can't remember who was watching. Rebellion doesn't always begin with noise. Sometimes it begins with silence. The moment you stop reaching for your phone before your own thoughts. The moment you resist the urge to perform your piece before you've even felt it. That's where power returns. Because influence loses its grip the second you start watching yourself with the same curiosity you once reserved for others. The first step to freedom isn't deleting your accounts, it's confronting your dependence. Ask yourself, who am I when no one's watching? If that question makes you uneasy, it's because you've built your worth on visibility, not identity. The rebellion isn't against influencers, it's against invisible influence, against the quiet algorithms inside you that crave attention more than truth. Machiavelli taught rulers to control the crowd by controlling its desires. But the Stoics, Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, taught the opposite. Mastery of desire is mastery of self. And that is the essence of this rebellion. Not to withdraw from the world, but to no longer let the world dictate who you are within it. Reclaiming yourself begins with observation without imitation. Learn to admire without becoming, to appreciate without absorbing, to witness beauty, power, or charisma, and still remain anchored in your own center. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are by integrating what you unconsciously project onto others. Every influencer you idolize reveals something about yourself that you've forgotten or disowned. Their confidence, their control, their creativity, their mirrors reflecting back your potential. The goal, then, isn't to stop following, it's to stop worshiping. True rebellion is subtle. It's choosing to speak less and feel more. It's creating for the sake of expression, not validation. It's embracing the discomfort of being unseen until your authenticity becomes its own gravity. Nietzsche once said, "Become who you are." But in an age of constant imitation, becoming who you are is an act of defiance. So, walk slower, think deeper, post less. Let your silence offend the noise. When you no longer chase attention, attention finds you. When you stop performing, presence returns. And in that stillness, the one you once feared, something begins to awaken. A quiet authority, a charisma that doesn't seduce but steadies, a kind of power that doesn't dominate but liberates. That is the rebellion, not a rejection of the world, but a reclamation of your soul. In the end, it's not the influencers that hold the real power, it's the attention we give them. Attention, that silent currency of the human soul, has built empires, toppled truths, and rewritten the story of what it means to matter. But here's the truth you were never supposed to realize. Every time you give someone your attention, you are giving them permission to shape your perception of reality. And perception, as Machiavelli knew, is reality. The modern tragedy isn't that we're being influenced, it's that we've mistaken influence for intimacy, mistaking proximity for connection, consumption for understanding, exposure for meaning. We've built an entire civilization around the illusion of being seen, while forgetting how to truly see. Carl Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Maybe that's what's happening now. Maybe the influencers aren't our masters, but our mirrors, projections of everything we unconsciously crave: validation, beauty, certainty, control. And so the question shifts. Not why are they so powerful, but why are we so easily swayed? The answer lies in the silence between our scrolling. The part of us that fears being unseen, unheard, unvalidated. That part is ancient, primal, and human. It doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be understood. Because the moment you understand it, you stop chasing the illusion of wholeness outside yourself. You stop mistaking visibility for worth. You stop performing and begin to be. That's the paradox. The very stillness you avoid holds the magnetism you seek. The influencers who seem untouchable aren't necessarily powerful. They're just coherent. Their energy, emotion, and intention move in one direction. But that coherence isn't their secret alone. It's your birthright. The highest form of charisma isn't the ability to draw attention. It's the ability to remain whole when the world demands fragmentation. It's to live in such alignment that your presence speaks louder than your profile ever could. And when you reach that place, when you no longer need an audience to exist, the entire architecture of manipulation collapses, because you've reclaimed the one thing no algorithm can predict or control: your awareness. The dark psychology of influence ends where self-awareness begins. And in that awareness, the game flips. You no longer scroll to escape your life. You create to express it. You no longer crave to be seen. You begin to see. The illusion dissolves, and what remains is truth. The most powerful influencer you will ever meet is yourself. And once you realize that, no one else owns your mind again.